Boy, can I help you?
Listen up. I'm bringing you the best content to ever exist in the door-to-door industry, from sales, leadership, recruiting, and personal development.
Well, why would I need that?
Because never before have we been able to collaborate with the top experts in their industries, sharing their secrets and techniques on what makes them the best.
Wait, who are you?
I'm your host, Sam Taggart, creator of the D2D Experts and D2D Con. Is there a place we can sit down?
Well, come on in.
Register today for D2D Con, January 10th through 12th. Learn from over 40 amazing speakers, including the real Wolf of Wall Street, Jordan Belfort. Come as a team, learn as a team, leave as a tribe.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Taggart with the Door to Door Podcast, and I'm here with Dino Watt, who is he has his PhD, which is called Passionate Husband and Dad. He is a keynote speaker, consultant, helps travel around the country and the world. Just got back from Australia, speaking on business and relationships. So bringing kind of the two together instead of, hey, I'll train you how to be successful at your business, but not successful in your family. Instead of, hey, I'll teach you how to be the great husband, but then make no money. Right. It's kind of bringing the two together. So he's writing a book right now called
Making Love and Business Work.
Making Love and Business Work. And that's what we're going to be jamming on today, which is a very relevant content for our audience. Because not only is this job hard, are we all competitive? Are we all, eat what we kill? So therefore, if we hunt harder and longer, we tend to kill more and get obsessed with that. Yeah. And so we get in this spiral. And so today, the big topic is going to be how to balance your life, your family, systems to put in place. And one thing I want to point out about Dino is he's done it. He did door-to-door 2008, 9 and 10. Yep. And went out there in the grind in Yuma, you said? Yuma, Arizona. That's like, 155 degrees every day? It was crazy.
Yeah, I have a picture of the 121 on one of the level temperature.
That's when it's the car door is the hardest door. When you're just so like, true. Air conditioning, please work forever.
So true.
And, so I mean, what's cool is the background is, obviously been successful entrepreneur in real estate and speaking and traveling around and done door to door. So a lot of the stuff we're about to dive into is going to be extremely relevant and super excited to have you on the show, man.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. And it's funny you mentioned that about like we eat what we kill. Like when you're not killing, right, and you have to still feed your family, that's when it's really hard, right? When you're not killing anything and you're out there saying like, no, everybody's saying no to me, honey. I don't know what to tell you, but I'll figure it out.
So you've had those weeks where you've made no money?
Oh yeah, especially my first. I want to say I went 2 weeks my first year without anything, right? And I have no money. We're living on whatever, like $500.
Yeah, the housing pay or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And I got 3 little kids and my wife, and I'm like, well, I guess we're all we're on diets this week. So it was a major struggle, and that's when your self-confidence gets really, really low, and you're thinking, man. And I was 35, so I wasn't like I can live off of Slim Jims and Monsters, right?
It's like I got 3 kids and rent to pay and bills to pay.
And I'm already feeling bad that I'm 35 and having to be out here. I was telling you earlier, I lost a ton of money and bad investments, and man,
it's usually how we all get into it, right?
Like it's desperation.
It's like, why do you knock doors? Because there was no other option.
Right, exactly.
Because no one else was hiring in 2009.
I have no other skills.
Well, the bottom of the barrel. No one knows I'm out here.
Knock doors and get rejected? Yes, I can do that.
Sign me up. No, I mean, it's funny, though, that I say that because it's really like kind of how you probably fell into it. And what's crazy is it's like, where else could I go make in such a short amount of time?
Right.
And how did door to door really pull you out of that situation you got into?
Well, that's completely why I am even talking to you right now. Why I reached out to you is because I have such an immense respect and gratitude for the industry. Because when there were no options for me, when I was thinking, oh my gosh, like I don't even have a college degree, so how am I going to go get a job? Like I can't go be a substitute teacher. I can go work, I guess, at McDonald's, but to support my family and having this option, I didn't even really know what I was getting into. And in one summer to be able to afford, not only to afford my life, but to save my home. Like we were able to save my home. I was going into foreclosure and we were able to save it. I was able to get enough to where it launched me into the next year and the next thing in my life. And then now, 10 years later, I can honestly sit back and say it saved my life. My wife is grateful. I have no regrets about going out door to door at all.
And what's cool is, you've remained grateful for those moments. I think a lot of people almost want to like hide those 2 years, and now you speak on it. You know what I mean? And I think so many people are ashamed of being like, oh, I had to succumb to that lowness of door knocking.
I had total shame.
Yeah, exactly.
I had total shame when I was doing it. Like, I knew it would be, I just approach this in my life anyway, where everything's a lesson, right? Even when there's the crap's hitting the fan, it's a lesson. And so I would hit every door and just say, first of all, I'd say to myself every morning, I only need one person. I just need one guy. That's it. One person to say yes. The other thing I would say is every door I would knock, I would say, I will talk about this from the stage one day. I will tell people about this.
Because you were always an aspiring speaker.
That's right. I was like, this is going to be my inspirational story sometime, because I never in a million years thought I'd be here. But, and I won't say that I was grateful as I was doing it, right? When I'm sitting in 121 degree heat, literally the day Michael Jackson died, I will never forget. I found out because I just happened to look at my phone at one point, putting my hat in somebody's pool in the front of their yard to get it wet with water.
Side note, great hack.
Total hack. It's great.
If you don't fill your hat up with water.
That's right. Yeah. Dump it on my head, man. I would. And I remember doing that and going, oh, Michael Jackson died, and putting it on my head. And like, I was not thrilled to be doing it, but I knew it was the next step for what I wanted to do. And of course, the gratitude came when I started getting better at the skill, and when I started understanding that this is a skill you have to learn, and when I started obviously being successful and getting more and more successful and seeing the game behind it, then the gratitude came. And now, being able to step back, I mean, I was still working my side hustle while I was doing door to door, just so I could believe I was still going to be able to do it someday. Mm-hmm. So,
and now
immense gratitude.
And now your daughter does it.
Now my daughter does it.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
My daughter decided, so she graduated school early. She actually started, now we can say this, illegally. She started when she was 17 because she graduated early. She had done a year of her junior year in high school in Brazil. She wanted to be an exchange student, so she did that. Came back, did not like high school and the vibe of high school at all, and so she graduated early. And I was like, well, you got to do something with your life. Like, you're not just going to sit around and do nothing. And she said she wanted to do door to door. We had some friends.
Yeah, I was gonna say, were you an advocate of that or helped motivate that?
Oh,
or
yeah,
were you
absolutely.
I was curious. Yeah. Like, some people also, dad being like, my dad did door to door in college, and he was a semi advocate. He's like, do what you want. It's a hustler. I know you're good at whatever. And but it's interesting. Like, my sister did it, and my parents were a little bit more like, cautious. They're like, really? Like, it's
well, I made sure she had mace on her.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's what I said. I'm like, Emily, grab your pepper spray.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
absolutely. I was supportive because now, obviously, hindsight, I know what character it builds, and if I can, any tool I can give my kids to grow and strengthen themselves, right? As a 17-year-old, almost 18, to be able to say, hey, this is going to give you a skill you will always be able to use. Yep. If she can learn how to sell now, she can always. She'll never have to worry about if something happens, heaven forbid, to her husband, or if she gets a divorce or whatever. She'll always be able to use this skill.
Always.
So, and she also wanted to travel a lot. And I was like, well, if you want to travel, like, this is the way to do it.
Yeah, you work for 5 months.
That's right.
Play for 3.
And that's exactly what she's done. She had her first year. She struggled a bit with her first office, had to moved offices and killed it there. Killing it for a 18-year-old when she's making, I think she made $40,000. Like, as an
18-year-old in the summer?
Right. I was just talking, she just got married 2 months ago, and her husband, they didn't have the best this last summer because they're all worried about the wedding plans, and there's a whole other subject of distraction in your relationships. But they collectively made, I think, $60,000. And I went, when I got married, I was $5,000 in debt because I put my honeymoon on a credit card, right? Like, I had no money. So that you're starting with $60,000.
Oh, I look at young married couples that do this job, and I'm like, you stink. I didn't have to go through like, how are we going to afford, top ramen this week? You know what I mean? Where most it's like, newlyweds, how is it?
Totally.
And then I want that to lead us into the relationship aspect.
Yeah.
But it was funny though, speaking of kind of parents, motivating their kids to learn this skill. I had a guy hit me up. He's a regional out of Idaho. He does satellite. He's like, hey, can I get a ticket for a door-to-door come? But I want to bring my son. And I was like, oh. His son's probably 10 or something.
Oh, wow.
I was like, but then
really
this was my reply. I go, is he an aspiring door-to-door guy, professional?
Right.
He's like, of course. I was like, as long as he's going to grow up to be a door-to-door sales guy one
That's
day.
right. That's right.
But it's funny because he was like, we started this conversation and it was like, man, like I want to force my kids to at least do it for a summer or a year, just for the simple fact of like the skill set that you learned. So
I'm telling you, if my son, my youngest, he's in the Army, and if he was in the Army, I'd be like, go do it.
Go get your degree of the doors.
Do it.
Exactly.
Do it. Absolutely. I mean, Army's bad enough and what he's going through. Right?
I was going to say, I met a guy. It was funny. We were on the plane coming home from Kansas last week, and I was like, I recognize you, and I was like, I know you from somewhere. Where do I know you? He's like, yeah, I did Vivint for like 6 years. You're Sam Tagger or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I knew I'd seen your face around, right? I was like, well, what are you doing now? He's like, I'm in the military. He's like, I'm training to become a Green Beret. And I was
wow.
oh, wow. Like, so doors to Green Beret.
Nice.
How was that? I was like, so he's like, yeah, I'm in like a year and a half in, and it was just like, man, that is another grind that I probably will never understand as Green Beret training.
Yeah,
you know what
absolutely.
I mean? Just like, He's like, yeah, it's a different animal. But anyway, so totally. Let's transition. So one, obviously, I'm super grateful for you coming and speaking at Door Con and supporting this movement, and we're honored to have you there, man. I think that this message, like I was adamant about having some type of relationship, marital support. I just think it's almost like if we could have a door-to-door support group or hotline that we could call every week and be like, hey man, I'm on the couch again.
I'm telling you, right?
I mean, there's been many times, where I've been verge of, this morning, I still get it. Like, I have the worst ups and downs in my relationship, and it's like, my wife was like, I wish we could live like normal people. You know how many times
it's
I've heard
so abnormal, right?
It is so
totally.
abnormal, and I'm like, our conversation yesterday was, I hate to break it to you, babe, I'm not built normal.
This is just what you got. You knew this getting into it, right?
And I said,
isn't new.
I'm wired this way, and I want to talk on this because it's so right now for me, and I'm like, well, if we're gonna get a PhD of relationships here, let's do this. Yeah. So yesterday the conversation, and when she listens, she never listens to my podcast, so it's okay. I talk. It's like I bring her in. It's okay.
It's okay. I have a best-selling book, and my wife's never read it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's like my mom read half mine. She's like, you're scamming people, and I was like, no. She's like, wow, I didn't realize how manipulative like sales psychology is, and I was like, man, it's psychology.
That's right.
Anyway, but what was I going to say? So we bring up this thing, and she's like, you always said, once the summer's over, we'll have time. And then once the preseason pushes over, and then once DDDCon's over, and once, and I was like, man, that is kind of true. Like, I always kind of have these weird sprints. And then I'm like, I came to the conclusion in our conversation. I was like, yeah, once we're dead, I think I'll have a downtime of like not wanting to be ambitious. You know what I mean?
Right,
and it wasn't, and it was like, I was like, oh, I just realized yesterday, Sunday, and, I was like, oh, kind of bored, so I start cleaning, and I deep clean the house, and I was like, I realized that how I'm wired, and I think how a lot of salespeople and entrepreneurs are wired is if we don't feel like we're being productive and getting some kind of result, that we fill that time with something, right? So anyway, what are your thoughts on that? Let's have our own little
a couple of things that you mentioned, right? Like your wife is basically, I think it's interesting that a lot of us, even guys and gals, do the same thing. And sometimes it might be a little heavier on the guy side that they don't actually pay attention to this, is that in a relationship, they're always going to tell you how you can make them happy, right? Now, obviously, ultimately, you can't make them happy, but they're always going to tell you what they're asking for. And it's up to you to decide, okay, am I going to pay attention to that? Am I going to do something about it or not? And that's the or not is where the trouble happens, right?
Yeah.
Because it's where they feel ignored or not paid attention to, or feel like they're less than, or there's even contempt for what they're asking. And those are really challenges in marriages, especially contempt. Contempt has been shown over and over again in studies to show that if you put your wife, or they feel like they're being put in contempt, or husband in contempt, then they will eventually choose out. because no one likes to feel less than at any time, right? And that's what you do when you put somebody in contempt, is for whatever reason you're feeling less than, so you put yourself above them and make them feel less than. So when your wife says, hey, you said after door-to-door con or whatever that we'd have time. Well, what a great way to say, okay, let's define what time is and what do you need, right?
See, and that's probably where I disconnect, because I want to get defensive and I want to be like, well, we just went to Bali for 2 months.
I'm doing all this for you.
Yeah, I'm like,
come on.
I'm doing it for you. Yeah, I'm doing it for the... I mean, I wanted to get defensive in that moment of just
guys especially do that.
I'm like, what do you mean? Like, time? Like, I could pull out my calendar and I could show you the time slots that, I was like, here's date night, here's this. And it's like, I think the problem is I wasn't listening how she, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't clear on what is time.
So what do you want?
Yeah,
what do you need? Do you need like a day at the spa without the kids? Do you need like, what is it? And that way you can have clarity on it, because clarity is power in a relationship. And that's where a lot of people fail, is they don't get clarity on, well, what are you asking for? Guys do this, right? I don't know how raw do you want to get?
Raw, dude.
Okay,
I'm talking like, let's talk about penises and vaginas.
Okay,
like,
I was going there. All right, so here's the deal. A lot of guys talk about their unmet expectations in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of guys don't talk about what they really want in the bedroom. When their wife has been with their kid for the next, and especially door to door, right? Door to door for guys, especially having that stress release at the end of the night to be able to say, hey, I want to go make love to my wife just because I want to get the stress out of my life, right? And it gives me a reason to rejuvenate, to get back into them. And literally, scientifically, the chemicals in the brain are rejuvenating. So it's really important to do that. But if you go to your wife and she's been dealing with the kids for all day long and they've been screaming or sick, like your kids are sick and whatever, to be able to say, hey, can we have sex? And she's like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, I don't feel that way. You're asking for a very generalized what sex is, whereas when you can actually have a conversation about putting a label on it. So my wife and I actually have a program that we talk about with couples where we say, okay, well, let's equate it to food and let's give a meaning behind it. So, hey, hun, like, I'd like to have sex. And she says, well, do you want like fast food? Do you want a home cooked meal, or do you want gourmet? Like, what are you looking for here? So therefore she can
understands,
know what you want, because
it's clarity. It's
a lot of times this guy's like, yeah, just give me a quickie. Let's go for it. That's fine. Yeah. But other times we're asking for, no, man, connection. You haven't had lingerie on in forever. And she's going, I don't have time for that. Like, what are you talking about? But when you can actually clarify it, and she can say, all right, well, I have time for a fast food meal or quickie tonight. Or if you can wait till tomorrow, we can have a little more home cook. We can have a little more time to get into it.
And pot roast.
Now all of a sudden there's a negotiation. Like, what is sales all about, right? And so now there's a negotiation, and you both feel like you're a part of it, because you get the chance to say, no, I just need sex. I will have a quickie right now.
Yeah.
Or, you know what? Okay, if we're going to have a guarantee here to tomorrow, we're going to have more, cool. Now there's clarity, and that's where that whole expectation, oh, my expectations are never met. Well, it's because you're not telling her what the expectation is. Now this works the other way too with wives, right? To be able to say, what do you mean time? Like, what do you need from me? Well, I just need time to be alone to go do, I haven't gone shopping for myself by myself in a month. I need 3 hours by myself. Oh, okay. We can make that happen. Good to know.
Right? I thought you were talking about time with me.
Yes,
and it's like,
exactly. Yes. And so that clarity is so powerful in a relationship that usually doesn't happen until all the bad stuff piles up and the crap hits the fan and somebody's threatening something, somebody's crying, and then all of a sudden we pay attention because there's an alarm happening. And instead of getting to that point, let's get to the place of where we can have clarity. And then everybody can understand. And that's the most powerful thing in a relationship, when you can have that clarity of understanding. Because when you said that, and now I'll touch on this part too, is you said, this is how I am, this is how I was wired. You're absolutely 100% right. And it's how she is and how she's wired as well.
Exactly.
And you both knew that. So there's this really interesting thing that happens in a relationship where the perspective will shift, but the personalities will stay the same. So if you were dating... So let's just say your wife was dating you. When you guys were dating, you were funny. In her mind, you were funny.
Oh, we've had these multiple conversations. Yes.
Like all of a sudden you were funny, right?
Yeah, I was cool.
You were so funny, and you were like, oh, you're just spontaneous, and she loved that about you. And now you're like so, you're so sarcastic, and you're so like unreliable. But that's what you married. Like, you knew that, and that's nothing's changed. Perspective has changed.
You took my sarcasm as funny. Now you take it as
Right.
demeaning.
Right. And it's like, okay, well, let's talk about the clarity of that. And there's something about growth, right? Like we're not the same people we were when we were 20 and 25, whatever, we got married. But the perspective of that is it's not a negative just because your perspective changed. It's just, oh, now we got to have new clarification on what that means and how I can adjust to that.
Yeah.
Because life is about adjustment.
Well, and it's funny because I literally was trying to explain. I was like, we're looking at it at different lenses. Like I'm looking at it like you're saying we haven't ever spent time together this year, and I'm like, yeah, I've traveled a lot, but I'm like, we've also been on 7 trips.
Yeah.
And I'm like, go to the normal life that we talk about, right? The other side.
That's so easy
and
to
I'm
do.
like, they get 2 weeks.
Look at them.
Yeah, look at them. And I'm like, when do they get to go to Asia for a month?
Right.
Like, when do they get to go do these things that we've done? And I'm like, but yes, I'm not. There might be times where I'm gone for an entire 3 days in a row where, yeah, they're home for a 4-hour window at night every night. And it's this deja vu game. And I was like, but it's just perspective because they're looking at our lives on Instagram and we look like the bucket list family.
Right.
I'm like sitting there going, I wish we could travel.
Yep.
And they're drooling over our life.
Yep.
And it's like, I'm like, we just have to look from a grateful perspective that we're here and we love each other, and you know what I mean? And it was just a hard, like, I was almost trying to feel like I was selling her on this, like, perspective. And I was like, but I shouldn't have to sit here and try to sell you. Like, I'm like,
well, we all do that, right? Like she does that too. And I'm sure she does that when she's sitting there talking about like all the stuff she's done with the kids and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you get the benefit of that, right?
Yep.
You get the benefit of coming home and them running up and daddy at the door, right?
Exactly.
And she's like, I've been here all day. What? I didn't get no dad, mommy. Like
Yeah.
no one's done. But we all have that different perspective. And it's really, I think it's important to look at it and say, all right, when you're able to say, well, we get this thing, we get that thing, you know, a lot of times it's really easy to point out all the reasons why we're right.
okay.
As opposed to looking for a moment of, they might have a point to this. Like it's not about the trip. Because when you're on the trip, like maybe there was, and I'm not saying this, I wasn't on a trip with you, but
Should have been.
Maybe there's a point where she's going, yeah, but even on the trip, you were on your phone for 12 hours, right? Or there was an emergency that came up. And sometimes we want to be the emergency, right? We want to be the one that's all the focus. And I do this thing where I talk about doing this whole, but you don't understand. Like when everybody says that to me and they start off with it, but you don't understand.
You just want to laugh.
It's like the height of ego, right?
Yeah.
It's dude, you don't understand. Because someone in the world's gone through this and been able to figure it out.
Yeah.
Someone's had that problem and was able to figure it out. So are you just saying that you're better than that person? Like your thing is better than that thing that you don't understand? Yeah, no, I don't have to understand and nobody has to understand. Just get through it. Like figure it out. Yeah. In a relationship, it's really easy to be like, but honey, we went on these trips but I have this wonderful house. And there's actually a really cool interview if you look it up on Facebook with Will Smith.
Okay.
His wife does, Jada Pinkett does this thing called Red Table Talks. And it's him at the table talking. And he's talking about how he was so offended because he'd built this amazing life for Jada and she wasn't happy. And she's saying, I don't want this and this doesn't make me happy. And he's like, what are you talking about? I have this amazing house, this amazing mansion, we have this beautiful life. We can go anywhere in the world. Think of all the other people who don't have that, right? Type thing.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, but that's not for me. You're saying it's for me. It's for you. It's your ego that's being fed. It's not for me.
Interesting.
And he was like, oh, like it just hit him because he was going, dang, she's right. I was building up all this stuff, my career, all the things I was doing, this house, everything, so that everyone else would be able to see, look what Will is doing for Jada. And when Jada's going, I don't care. I don't care about that. It's an attack on his ego.
Yeah.
And for me, hearing that, I just went, I've totally done that in my own life.
Oh, yeah.
Totally. And
well, because it's like so funny. We do these why exercises. What's your holy cause? What's your why?
Right.
And I think, you know, you're like,
Motivators,
default answer is because I want to have a great family.
Yep.
And how, you know,
or they go to ego too. Like I did that same exercise with some of my clients and I do it. I actually this weekend I'm doing a sales training and I do this whole sales training with these ladies and I'll say, why do you do what you do? oh, because I'm a people person and I love people. I'm like, that's such an ego thing,
Yeah,
right? Like,
what?
give me a break. No, why do you do it? Now, when you get into it and you get deeper and deeper, so my why, I know my why in my life. My why is because I never want to see an 8-year-old kid standing on a sidewalk watching his father pack up his Honda Civic hatchback and drive away from his home. Well, that's what I was. I was that 8-year-old kid, and I watched my father drive away from our home and leave my parents in divorce, and leave my family in divorce, I should say. That's why I do what I do. Now, it seems so weird. Like, what is that? Well, it's because I understood that my parents didn't know how to didn't understand relationships to where they could be better in their relationships. And so therefore I didn't have to go through the pain of being a kid of divorce. Right. Yeah. And so that leads me to understand relationships more. And that understanding relationships helps me understand sales better because I know how to connect with people better and build rapport better with people. And that helps me be on stages better and helps me grow people's companies together. Like that's my why.
Love that.
And so when people don't get that, they come up with all this egotistical stuff. Now, that's also a part of healing my past, right? And now I'm so grateful. I have made so much money off my parents' divorce. It's ridiculous, right? Like, I use that story. I use that why all the time.
Yeah, you're like that.
I'm like, dude.
Thanks for motivating me.
Yeah, right. Thanks, Dad. I'm not giving you a commission off of this, but basically because you were an idiot, I have an amazing career, and people pay me a lot of money to help them with theirs. Like, that's how I have to look at it now. And yet the why is that little boy standing on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So we got to get to that place. And when you get to that place in your relationship, that's where my relationship works, is because I never wanted that. So what do? I make sure that I have systems in place for my relationship to where my wife and I communicate, even when I'm an idiot. Now, I'll admit, whenever people hear this, whatever, this morning, I was a total complete idiot to my wife. Complete idiot. To where still I need to go and apologize for something that I did. And we have systems for that. Like, she knows I'm going to apologize. I know I'm going to apologize. I know I was an idiot. And I know when she does it, she'll do the same thing.
Yeah,
because we have systems for that.
Let's talk about systems. Because, in business, it's all about systems.
That's right.
Like when you can automate, you can systematize, you can plan for.
Yep.
So I think a lot of times we, are so good at systems in our business, and we just think marriage and I'm speaking for myself. And I'm trying to speak in the sense of.
But you're speaking for a ton of guys listening too.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, I guarantee. And if you're out there listening to this, be like, but you don't understand.
Yeah.
Mine's
different.
Mine's different. I'm like, okay. I'm
special that way.
I'm like, I've met and worked with and friends, and, I just had a friend go through a big divorce, and I'm like, oh man, I've been close, but geez, I can't, I'm committed, I buckled down, but I'm committed to saying, what systems am I missing? Because heck, I have no systems. I'm winging it. It's like I'm pulling this out of my butt half the time.
And that's what most people are doing, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, help me out here.
And you would never do that in anything else, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You would never go. I even do this all the way back to the beginning. And I speak to a lot of people out in the world and in the secular world. And people are like, well, what about just living together? And I'm like, you would never go into business with someone nowadays just by saying, hey, I promise... yeah, it's going to all work out. You'd have a contract. You'd make sure that things were in order, right? You have systems, and that's the reason when I started my first business, the business of marriage, I did it based on that. Of going, if McDonald's does certain things to get a certain result, why wouldn't you do that in your marriage? If you're having a hard problem with communication, why wouldn't you create a system? So the sex thing, right? Like what we just talked about, that's a system. Yeah. That's a system my wife and I use still to this day.
I love that.
We both went, what's fun is food? Okay. Well, let's think of food. It makes sense. We understand what fast food is. I can talk about it in front of my kids. I can talk about it in front of anybody. Nobody knows what we're talking about. Hey, we're going to have some gourmet tonight. Yeah, we'll probably have some gourmet meal tonight. Like,
well, now the entire door.
Now everybody knows. I've done this on enough podcasts that it is out there. Everybody knows. But no, and people come to us to this day from 12 years ago when I first started talking about that people are like, yeah, we still talk about that. But that's a system, right? We used to have a system. We don't do it as much anymore, but it was something that it helped my wife understand the importance to me. And of course, we're guys, so it's always going to go back to sex. But I had this thing where my wife loves fresh flowers. And we were poor and we had no money. I would either go pick some or I'd get some like at the Walmart or whatever. But my wife loves fresh flowers. Well, I was, especially when I was first married, was a guy who's like, hey, I like having gourmet sex, whereas there's, some sort of, it's an event. It's not just like, hey, just so we can get it done. And I'm like, yeah, I like to see lingerie on my wife every once in a while. So we made a system, and I said, okay, honey, for every time that I bring you fresh flowers in the month, you know that at least one time this month, that's going to be a gourmet. And she was like, that's a great system, because it'll be a constant reminder for at least a week that I want to make sure that that happens for you. Because she wants to she wants to make me happy too, and I want to make her happy. And so now it's not me going, hey, here's flowers, let's have sex, right? It's here's the flowers that will remind you of something that I have a need for too.
Yeah.
There's different systems we have. We have systems in our the biggest system that we do, which is something I wish every couple would do more of. There's actually two really big ones. Number one, we do a thing called a marriage mastermind, and the marriage mastermind is basically your business council meeting where you get together, and the number one stated cause of divorce for most couples in this country is money, and the second is communication. And so what I did is I created this basically an outline that says, okay, once a month at a minimum, ideally is once a week, but once a month at a minimum, we're going to get together, and just the two of us, no distraction, no kids, we're not hungry, we don't have somewhere else to be, we're not overly tired. We have a very specific management meeting with the two of us where we, number one, go over our schedule. Schedules seem to be this weird thing where people, still to this day, I meet people all the time who don't sync their calendars. And I'm like, how do you not know what your kids are doing, your spouse is doing? Because when you're supposed to pick up little Johnny and your spouse thought you were picking up little Johnny and little Johnny's sitting there stuck, somebody's going to get pissed off.
Yeah.
So syncing calendars, knowing what's going on, what surprises are happening, what date nights we have. For some couples who struggle with it, when you're going to have sex, there are couples that really should actually schedule their sex. Date nights versus night outs, I'm a big proponent of. There's a difference between just going out to a movie and it's an event, right? Yes. Like I did something cool, like my wife and I went to Jim Gaffigan, right? You had to get tickets ahead of time instead of, hey, is McDonald's open on our way to the movie, right?
Yeah.
So schedule is first thing. Second is security. So this is going to, not a tangent, but I'll just let you know. So there's two main motivators and drivers for men and women. And if you look at every study that's out there, it all boils down to these two things. For women, it's security and validation. So security typically in financial, emotional, physical, and spiritual. If they can feel secure in those areas, they're happy. It's part of their DNA. And the second part is validation. Whatever they choose to be doing at this moment, it's supported. Like you get it. So security-wise, in your marriage mastermind, you need to go through money, and you need to talk about money and know how much money you have and don't have, and what bills are coming up, and what surprise bills are happening, and what are you going to do? What's the plan ahead of time? Women, especially in the security area, they will support you so much more if they know you have a plan. But if you're just winging it and they feel like you're just winging it, that's going to push every security button, right?
So it almost creates anxiety.
Absolutely. So door to door, right? One of the things that my wife and I would do is we would plan every week. We would talk about my goals and how I was going to hit that and what I would need to do to hit the goal. It wasn't just one thing I did in the meeting with everybody else, right? Her, yeah. My wife was involved with that because then she could support me on that and she could know what I was going for and she could help me out with that. So we had that planning meeting. So you'd go with your security, and then next you want to, so you schedule security, and then sandwich, which is the question which everybody avoids, which is, how am I doing as a spouse? Like, how are you going to know anything in life, right?
Unless you
ask it. How am I doing?
Oh, man.
And it's so hard.
I don't know if I don't ask that question right now.
So in the marriage mastermind, the point of that is, that's the trigger. The trigger of that question is, if I'm asking you, how am I doing as a spouse? It has to be created to where if I ask you that, you know it's time to be gentle on me, but I'm asking for reals. Yeah. Like it's not time to like throw up, oh, you suck at this, suck at this. So you have to start off with, what are you always grateful for? You know what? You are knocking every day. You're out there, you're sweating, you're seeing other guys be successful and you're not. I just appreciate the work that you're doing. I really, really know that you're going to take care of us no matter what. And an area where I think that you could work on, it would make me happy if, or I would feel loved if.
It's the way you start it instead of, you suck at this.
That's right. And most people want to support the person they love, right? If your wife were to come down here right now and say, you know what, honey, it would really make me feel supported if, or it would make me happy if, or it would make me feel loved with. Supported, loved, happy. If she started off with any one of those, the next thing coming out of her mouth, you're going to go, oh, okay. Like, because now you know, right? Typically it goes to like, you never, or you always, or how come I have to? Instead of going to the request. And so we create that request. And then we end it again with, and I know you're doing as best you possibly can, or whatever compliment at the end. So you sandwich it. There's a thing called a verbal sandwich, right? The breads, there are the thank yous, and the middle is what you need, right? The meat. If you can do those things once a month, your marriage will completely dramatically change. Change.
Count on me to do it.
Do it.
Will you follow up with me?
I actually email me. I actually have
an outline of
it.
Okay,
that
good.
is in the agenda. You can sit there and go like, okay,
I need to put a folder on my wall right here and just pull a sheet off the wall.
I had a guy who had it like in a big poster form, like on his wall, like,
and we whiteboarded out.
It's like that's what it
I'm
is.
like, it's dry erase.
Seriously, it's that. And you have to have that in order to keep that in line. And I lost my train of thought when I said there's two things that I think are really important.
Validation.
So there is that, the validation. No, we're talking about marriage mastermind. So having those things. Oh, okay. So there's a second thing that is an epidemic in our society that if you can do, it'll make all the difference as well. Go to bed at the same time as your spouse. Now, I didn't say go to sleep at the same time as your spouse, because I'm a night owl. I'm somebody who gets a lot of work done between midnight and 4 in the morning, right? Sometimes I'm up, especially if I'm writing my book or anything like that. I do a lot of work at night because I know there's nobody going to call me. Yeah. No one's blowing up my phone.
That's why I actually loved Asia, as I was like, got more done when no one's bugging me.
Oh, man, when I was in Australia and it was like totally different day, I'm like, sweet.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Go to bed with your spouse. End the day with your spouse. Talk about your wants and your desires. Talk about the great things that happen in that day. However you end your day, my wife and I end our day with a prayer. What happens is a lot of, I'll say guys especially, they use the excuse of, I can't go to sleep, because they're not trying to go to sleep, number one, and they are making an excuse to go get on the computer, Xbox or whatever it might be, and you do not need that for it to go to sleep. I promise you.
Yeah.
But if you can go to bed with your spouse, end your day, and give it a couple of minutes, give it like 5-10 minutes just to lay there, both in silence and quiet. And, for me, I always joke with my wife, once I hear her snoring, I know she's out. So if I'm still not asleep, I can go. But a lot of times I will fall asleep, and I don't actually need to be up.
Yeah, you don't have to stay busy.
Unfortunately, we do live in a world, it's no surprise, right? We have, guys who will stay up and they're on the computer way too late, just screwing around, and it leads to porn.
Yep.
Or Xbox. I said there's two motivators for men and women, right? The two motivators for men are to, number one, feel like the hero, feel like the superhero, feel like they have just conquered the planet for their wife, right? And if she can make him feel like that, he'll do anything.
Yeah.
And number two is to be physically connected or satisfied. And for most men, and I'm using a generality here, but for most men, sex is a form of love. And so to not get that is denying of love.
Yeah.
Well, in our society, guys can sit on Xbox for hours and they can conquer the world.
Yeah.
They can be the superhero, right? They just won the war. They won the whatever. And then they can literally flip a screen and get the sex.
Yep.
So for any wives that might be listening to this, just know, and it's not an excuse, and they're like, I'm not trying to make an excuse for them at all. What I'm saying is there's an awareness of those two things are one of the major reasons I believe that there's such a problem. So if I know that my wife has two, or my women, but my wife has two motivators and I have two motivators, well, that's not a lot to work on. Yeah, if I can just focus on those two things, make her feel secure, make her feel validated, make me feel like the superhero. And I ask women this a lot. I'll say, when was the last time you made him feel like the hero?
Yeah.
And they'll sometimes, perspective again, they'll be like, I tell them all the time that I love them, they're doing a good job. And so I'll go to him and I'll say,
Katie!
I'll say, when was the last time you felt like the superhero?
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, all the time I get guys who are like, I can't tell you the last time I felt like superhero.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I just
but it's
go to work,
true,
I do my job, I do what I'm supposed to do.
And a lot of times you get shamed for just trying to provide.
Yeah.
Trying to put meat on the table. It's like, geez, I'm in trouble for wanting to win. You know what I mean?
Well, and a part of that though is again not the planning of it, like just like
yeah, I'm playing extremely.
Sure, right,
saying,
but let her know, hey,
yes.
So I'm doing this because of this, and I want you to hit this goals. And I mean, you can roll anybody into anything as long as you let them know that you're trying to help them get the thing they want.
Yeah,
right.
So and exactly, and then it's like, hey, in return, you have to also be advocating their two needs of like validation.
Absolutely.
Like, I get it. It's super hard staying home with the kids all day, and where versus what'd you do all day? The home's still a wreck.
Oh
and
my gosh,
I think that's like my biggest problem.
Never say that because there's something they did all day. Like, I look, there's extreme cases, right, where you're like, okay, something's wrong here. But for the most part, people want to succeed and win. So if they feel like they're not, and they feel like you're criticizing that, it's the same way, right? Yep. So criticism is one of those really interesting things, because all criticism is you're making a request. You're just making it really badly. Yeah. So why not just make the request? Yeah. Criticism is a killer, because it all of a sudden brings out this whole like what you're not and what you don't. And we already feel there's not a single person on the planet who doesn't have some sort of like inferior complex and like I'm failing and I suck and screwing this up, or I'm an imposter. They're going to figure it out that I really don't know what I'm doing. Yep. Like we all have that. And so to get that from the person you love most in the world, and the person who like is the only person in the world you're voluntarily getting naked in front of, that's
no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm like, you don't know me, right?
Yeah,
I got another, passion. I'm just kidding. No, but it's so true though. Like I think a lot of people, we don't realize the shame or the pain that it can come by, some of the damage, some criticism or just mistreatment or ignoring, or I just think of some of the things that I deal with in marriage and relationship, and it's like, it's hard to even communicate and be clear around. Yeah. Like, geez, like I'm trying,
But here's the thing that I want you to give yourself, give everybody else a break. Like, when were we taught this?
Oh, it's just from young age. I mean, it's childhood.
We see patterns, right? And we either typically in most patterns, whether it be money, whether it be business, whether it be relationships, we either repeat the same pattern or we completely go against it. Yeah. And we weren't taught how to build relationships. I usually say this from stage. The reason why I focus on relationships so much, why I have the relationship expert below my name, is because I know that everything I've ever received up until this moment, so this interview, has been due to a relationship I've built in one way or another, right? Yep. And I know that everything I will ever receive from here on out is due to a relationship I will build. So we talk about how to say things and what to say. We talk about, I teach on body language and communication, all that stuff. But the most important thing I can do is learn how to strengthen my relationships. Number one with myself, and then next with the people closest to me. So we don't get that though. Like we go to all the years of schooling, college, nobody gets that. Yeah. No one does that. And why not? That's the most important thing in the world. So
no, I mean, shoot, let's end on that note. I mean, it's so true though. Like, there's no book on it. There's millions of books on it, but there was no programming from a young age that was like, I'm intentional, aware of how I effectively deal with relationships. And I think that's been one of my biggest struggles. I look back at friends, family members, my own siblings. Like, I've struggled relationship wise, and I think I almost have just said, well, I'm just not good at relationships. You know what I mean? And I've almost become depressed around.
Give up on it.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm good at certain things and I'll get the spotlight for that. Yeah. And I'm not good at these things and I accept it. But versus geez, why don't I intentionally find the roadmap and reprogram myself to take a little bit more proactiveness around it.
Well, and that's what's powerful there, Sam, is it can be reprogrammed.
It can.
It can. And what's so cool and is I love looking at a lot of neuroscience stuff like Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, Dr. Amen and stuff like that. You can completely reprogram your brain. You can change your habits. I don't know if you read or you guys have suggested The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Brilliant book, right? Such great data about it's the micro habit that creates the decision making. You can reprogram it. So. Yeah. Well, cool. Anyways, this has been great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on the show. Super excited to obviously hear from you more at Door to Door Con.
Yeah,
appreciate it, man.
Yeah, we'll have fun.
Much love.
Thank you.
Thank you.